Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Simon Benstead. I'm Executive Chairman and CFO of Lake Victoria Gold. We are a Tanzanian-focused explorer, developer, and near-term producer. Probably the most important part of our business model is the incredibly powerful local strategic partner we have in the Taifa Group. Taifa Group is owned and operated by Rostam Aziz, who is the wealthiest and arguably the most influential private citizen in Tanzania. Some call him the kingmaker. We have two projects in Tanzania. One is the Imwelo project, which is a fully permitted project. Mining licenses are in place, essentially shovel ready. Last week we announced a financing package to fully fund construction to get us into production. I'll talk more about that in a moment. Our legacy exploration project is called Tembo. It's directly adjacent to Barrick's Monster Bulyanhulu deposit, which is a 20 million ounce deposit at 20 grams a ton. It's really a world-class project, and our ground is directly adjacent, and their trends very clearly come into our ground. Tanzania has really been developed by, dominated by the majors. There's been very few juniors that have thrived in Tanzania because it's a very difficult environment in which to operate. And that's why it's so incredibly important to have a powerful and influential strategic partner. Just our capital structure here, you can see that management and insiders own approximately 30%. I'm the largest individual shareholder, owning around 9% of the company. My partners and directors join me as large shareholders. You'll see Barrick is on the cap table at 3%. That's from a transaction that we did with them a number of years ago, which I'll touch more on in a moment. Taifa Group, you see them on the cap table. That's Rostam Aziz at 8%. Imwelo acquisition at 12%. We acquired that project about a year ago for all stock. It was approximately 24 million shares issued at 22 cents. Interestingly, 100% of those shares are tied up in escrow until nameplate production is reached. Three small institutions, most notably the Phoenix Gold Fund, which is essentially the private fund of David Crichton Watt, who is a Swiss and Malaysian-based gold investor. And then retail, the vast majority of that comes from a life offering that we completed last October, where we raised $6 million at 17.5 cents with 27-cent warrants. You can see that those are the warrants on the cap table there. Just a little bit about Tanzania. It's got approximately 60 years of very stable democratic rule. Very pro-mining legislation was written in 2021, actually with the assistance of Mark Bristow, who was the CEO of Barrick at the time. Again, very, very stable. The government has robust economic participation in all projects in Tanzania, with a top-line royalty somewhere between 4% and 7%, depending on how much you refine locally. A corporate tax rate of 30%, and a free carried interest of 16% to align Tanzanian government with approximately 50% of the economics. But it works well because it gives them an incentive and reason to support your business. The Imwelo project. This is a project that we acquired, as I mentioned, for all stock last year for 5.5 million Canadian. It has a relatively small resource of 300,000 ounces, but the reason why it's so small is that the Australian group that built this resource was really interested in only demonstrating enough ounces so they could justify a mining decision, which ultimately would get it into production and start to produce cash flow. That's what attracted us to the project, is really using this project as a foundational piece from which to grow. Many projects in the world may seem economic, but they could be 10 years away from production and possibly miss this cycle. So I think what makes Lake Victoria Gold very unique is tremendous exploration upside, but this near-term production. The project benefits from approximately 30,000 meters of historical drilling with some great results, but you can see that all of it is relatively shallow. The project is located approximately 12 kilometers due east of Gator Gold Mine, which is a monster project owned by AngloGold Ashanti, where they produce approximately 450,000 ounces per year. This is sort of a mock-up of of the layout at Imwello. The geology is quite similar to that of Gaeta, and also to the Buck Reef project, was 20 kilometers to the south of us, owned by TRX Gold. The first area, which we call Area C, is the first pit area, relatively high grade at 3.7 grams. This will be the first 18 to 24 months of production. We're planning on building a 500 ton per day CIP plant with initial production in the 12 to 15,000 ounces per annum. When you start to do the math on that, you can see that cash flow in year one will be approximately our current market cap of 60 million Canadian dollars. I mentioned that we did a life financing in October of last year for $6 million. The primary use of those funds was essentially for production readiness and mine optimization. So we did some pit design work and some geotechnical work. We put a couple of deep holes in to essentially to confirm that these systems improve at depth. And what you notice with every project in Tanzania in the Lake Victoria Goldfield is that structure and grade tend to get better as you go deeper. We also looked to increase the resource and convert some of the ounces to an elevated category. But in essence, all of this work was condition precedent to satisfy accessing a gold loan. Last week we press released a term sheet that we assigned, a binding term sheet that we've signed with a company called Monetary Metals, to essentially borrow up to 6,000 ounces of gold, which will fully fund construction at Imwello and get us cash flowing. In 2021, there was a pre-feasibility study done that showed a capex of approximately $9.5 million. We've revisited a lot of those numbers, updated them, added very, very conservative contingencies to get to a $15 million capex number. So this gold loan, which will be up to $25 million, will fully fund construction. The Tembo project. So in blue, at the bottom right of the screen, you'll see that's Barrick's Monster Bullion Hulu deposit. As I said, that's about 20 million ounces at approximately 20 grams per ton. Their systems are all northwest trending, going directly into our ground. And it's pretty clear to us and to Barrick that system runs into our ground. They find themselves having drilled to, or sort of mined at the bottom of their shaft, and now find themselves in a position where they need relatively high grade, relatively shallow material to fill their mill. Historically, we've done spent about $20 million here and have drilled approximately 50,000 meters with some bonanza grade results. Our best hole, 22 grams at over 15 meters. And what's happening on our ground is that we are seeing that northwest trending structures, but also east-west trending and also northeast trending, and that's where we're getting some of these blowout zones. This is a deal that we did with Barrick, which is how they ended up on our cap table. If I could just back up here does this thing, I guess it doesn't back up this thing. Oh, there it is. Sorry. Sorry, this thing has got a life of its own here. You can see here that, as I said, those Barrick trends go directly into our ground. And the licenses that surround all in white, we used to own those. And they were non-core to us. We'd spent $0, done zero work there. And we're able to sell those to Barrick for $6 million in upfront cash, including plus a $9 million commitment from them to explore in the first 4 years. We're coming to the tail end of that. And what's exciting for us is that sometime in the next 6 to 12 months, they'll have to do an initial resource estimate. And the way we did that deal is we get paid on the first 5 million ounces of discovery, $20 an ounce on the first million, $10 an ounce on the second million, and $5 an ounce thereafter, for total proceeds of up to $45 million US. Again, relative to our current market cap, it's quite extensive. Barrick, as part of that deal, bought 5.5 million shares at 27 cents, and that's how they ended up with a 3% position on the cap table. This is a recreation and a graphic of a Barrick slide. You can see some of those blue dots, which I'm not sure if this thing will, I guess the pointer doesn't work. But you can see essentially on our east-west border, there's two blue dots, and on our north-south border, there's a big blue dot. That's where Barrick is currently drilling. We've had conversations with them almost every month in the last 2 years where they definitely want to come and buy this central claim from us, but we think that it's better for us to wait them out. They've got deeper pockets and a longer time horizon than we do. So to that end, we have been working with a local third-party group called the Niati Group, and it may seem hard to believe, but they have built a 500-ton per day CIP plant on spec. That's not something that you would do or I would do, but local Tanzanians that are essentially handed money from the banks because of a mandate from the government to support locals, gave these guys $5 million to go build a plant. They've built it. It's been commissioned in the last couple of months. I was there 3 weeks ago, and they don't have any feed for it, and the bank debt comes due pretty soon. So we find ourselves in a pretty opportunistic position to be able to work with them on a joint venture that's being finalized where we can effectively supply the feed for that plant and have a very healthy part of the economics without having to put up a tremendous amount of CapEx or very little CapEx at all. So it gives us a path to near-term production and cash flow at Tembo, in addition to Imwelo, where we could see ourselves a year from now essentially having cash flow that is more than our current market cap. Just some more images from this plant. I mean, it's a real plant they've built, again, they find themselves in a very, very precarious position. So just a little bit on our team. You've met myself as CFO and Executive Chairman. My partner, Mark Cernovich, is the CEO. He was actually scheduled to be here. He moved to Tanzania last week. His wife and his daughter join him today. Tanzania is one of those places where business is done in person. I mean, I've never had a Zoom meeting with our billionaire partner. Everything is done in person, and it's become very, very clear that there are tremendous opportunities in Tanzania that are underexploited. As I said, it's been dominated by the majors, and there's tremendous opportunity on the ground to acquire other assets that deserve to be mines that have been messed up or have reverted to government control. And this is why having the billionaire power player as a strategic partner is incredibly important. Just touching very briefly on our advisory board, really seasoned executives. Emma Priestley is the CEO of a Ghana-based producer. Ian Stalker is one of the founders of K92. He's by far our most active advisor, probably more active than all of our board members, and a critical part of our team. And in essence, here's the story. Near-term cash flow with tremendous exploration upside, a very, very friendly mining jurisdiction where the government participates in the economics. Lots of exploration upside, tremendous M&A opportunities as the country opens up. I failed to mention just recently a couple of examples of the international capital that's flowing into the country. The Perseus Group, approximately a year ago, paid $250 million for probably the biggest non-major owned asset in the country called Nyanzaga, and they've recently announced a $650 million final investment decision to develop that into a mine. And we've done very little marketing. This is essentially the first that we've started to tell the story. There's no free paper, there's no cheap paper. Everybody owns their stock. It's very closely held, and the stock is very well positioned for a re-rating in the very near term. And with that, I've just about hit my time, and if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer. Okay, not everybody all at once. Okay, thank you.